Last week, you may remember, we talked about the Pharisee in Jesus' parable, who, while seeming to be holy in following the Torah, really wasn't getting at the heart of the law. And the reading from the prophet Isaiah this morning is very condemning for someone who only follows the letter of the law, no matter how strictly. Because Isaiah makes it very clear what it is we should actually be doing. Because he makes it clear that God isn't just looking for sacrifices or festivals. He's looking for something more, for something deeper from his people. Because Torah doesn't just call us to honor God. It also means loving our neighbor, as we once again heard at the beginning of our service today. Following ritual laws to honor God doesn't mean blindly following, step by step, the process of worship. It means allowing ourselves to be in relationship with God. And we cannot do that. We cannot be fully in relationship with God unless we are in relationship with each other. In fact, God says he won't even listen to the Israelites' prayers until they renew their relationship with one another, until they seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend the orphan, plead for the widow. And then, when his people allow themselves to be close, not only to God, but with one another, God will go even further in renewing his people. He says that though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be like snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool. And we see an example of God doing this in the gospel lesson this morning. We see Zacchaeus, who is not only a tax collector, which I'm hoping everyone here who was here last week remembers what all that entails, but he is the chief tax collector. He's a man who has become rich from a dastardly profession. Now, Zacchaeus heard that Jesus was near, and he felt a call to go and see him. But Zacchaeus happened to have the same problem that I do, and some of our younger folks here do as well. He was quite short, so he had trouble seeing Jesus. And so he does what most of us would try to do in this sort of situation. He looks for a good elevated place where he can actually see Jesus coming by. Although Zacchaeus does what I assume some of our younger folks would if they're like I was when I was their age, and happens to climb a tree to do so. And Jesus, while he's perched up in this tree, while Zacchaeus is up here, happens to see him as he walks by. And Jesus, while recognizing Zacchaeus and probably knowing what it is that Zacchaeus did and who he was as a tax collector, chooses not to chastise him, but instead honors him with his presence. And because Jesus was willing to be in relationship with him, Zacchaeus decides to renew his relationship with all of his neighbors. He says that he will give away half of his riches to those who need it. And in addition to that generosity, Zacchaeus promises to give back anything he's defrauded anyone of. And not only to give it back, but to give it back fourfold. And this is a great example of giving to the church. And a reminder to all of us that we don't merely need to tithe, that we should really give proportional to our wealth, whatever that may be. But the full extent of what Zacchaeus is doing is to repair the broken relationship he has with his neighbors, those around him. And this comes about only because God chooses to come down and have a relationship with him. And because of the work Jesus did in restoring Zacchaeus' relationship with him, Zacchaeus receives salvation, as Jesus tells us in the lesson today. Because in the end, only God can bring us to salvation. Only God can renew us. But that renewal means being in relationship with God. And if we're in relationship with God, we are in relationship with each other as well. Just as we see with Zacchaeus trying to make amends for his past wrongs, trying to change his life, trying to move away from selfishness to love and charity for others. And we are called to be the same and to do the same with our own lives. We're not just called to merely follow a law set forward for us in a step-by-step manual. Instead, we are called to develop our relationship with God. And oftentimes, the best way to do that is to build up our relationship with one another. And that means doing many of the things that we already have done as a church. It means being present with the people we cook for, just as we were this summer for the Sawyerville Catfish Supper, and not just dropping something off simply to fulfill our duty. It means opening our doors to others and being present with them, just as we were in our celebration of communion with the Sawyerville staff members this summer. It also means going outside of our boundaries and being present with those who need our help in the community, even if we don't know them. And it also means keeping our eyes open, seeing when someone's feeling sad or just needs an extra helping hand. Whether that is a stranger we meet or even the person sitting next to you in the pew today. We are all, as baptized members into Christ's body, called to love God. And by loving God, to love our neighbor. And so we are called to be in relationship with one another, to care for each other, and to show that we care. So as we go forth from here this morning, think about how you can be better in love and in charity with your neighbor. Think about how you can restore yourself to those who have done you wrong. Think about how you can be there for those you may have wronged, or for how you might care for the needy, the widow, and the orphan among you. In short, ask yourself, how will you go forth and love your neighbor as yourself.